This is Atlas Thugged. As much as we have, it's currently a media blackout right now. It's about a 10-minute video here. Get the libertarians out of this party, dude. Part of a new series I'm going to be running called Bot or Not.
I grew up as a white man, and you're the exact opposite, you know?
It's time we have a difficult conversation about race.
40 IQ points it needs to think about what is being told to you.
Most people are just blatantly apathetic to what goes on around in their surroundings, let alone this blatant.
A trans woman's penis make you gay?
Can I decline to answer that comment?
The dating market is for men your age. I'm not a misogynist, I'm a sexist. Right, like for example, like as a white man, I can go out and I could go right here in Columbus and scream the N-word as loud as I wanted to because I have that privilege. Those who would sacrifice a little freedom for a little convenience serves neither.
Titan says, Browns should be for whites. We were just trying to help them run a better empire.
Hey, truth.
But she's straight up, she's like, stock market. She's like, bro, like, I can't even buy a fucking house. Like,
And probably doesn't help that half the comments are, "Oh, you're not banned on YouTube, man. How is this guy? How is this guy not banned on YouTube?" It's like, yeah, I'm sure YouTube probably picks up on those things, and they're probably wondering why so many people are saying that,
and all these top brass pundits who have some kind of association or relationship with Epstein, it's getting to the point where you got to think like I'm about to go look at my residential history and be like, did I live next to Epstein for like some time? Like, man, everyone on this planet must have some relation to Epstein. And then you go, oh, actually, no. This is because the administration is all wrapped in together with it themselves.
and I said this maybe about a year ago. What if Christianity wasn't in such a cucked position? That what if Andrew Tate, like Tristan, would have went to a Christian position? Fell for it again award, #1 right here. And you know what? I can't even make fun of the audience because I fell for it too. And that's probably what I'm most pissed about. He's huffing some extreme copium. Oh yeah, sister, you definitely owned him. Hey, can I see you after tonight? It's like that's that's what you're competing up against because or bad jacketing him and calling him a weird little gay.
Is this like alt-right Colt's husband? What am I listening
Yeah.
Okay, stop it. This guy's gonna get into statistics, stuff like that.
Oh, no, statistics, not
So-
on the show. We
so-
don't do statistics.
Hello and welcome in to another episode of Offensively Accurate, hosted by yours truly, Atlas Thugged. And joining me today is a wonderful guest, one of the founding members of Outside the Overton, over there with Zeb Boykin and Josh Vandernoord. This is 1989Theology. I'm not going to name dox you unless you want to say it yourself, so I'll stick with 1989 for now. But we have a good show in store for you guys today. We're largely going to be covering issues around Christianity. But two sects will be under the spotlight for today. It'll be Presbyterianism and orthodoxy. And from there, we'll probably move the conversation a bit more into some sports ball, Palantir, and we'll cover some topical news as it relates to reparations, a story that I'm sure you guys are going to be pissed off about. So we'll get into it. But without further ado, and thank you for sparing your time, Mr. 1989. Who are you, sir, and what do you do?
Well, hello, Atlas, and thanks for having me on, man. You can call me Todd. You can call me TB. I'm Todd Baker. My audience knows this, so just you can call me whatever you want. Don't care. Just glad to be here, man. Sure do appreciate it, and it's going to be a good time. Going to be a good conversation.
Yeah, no, definitely. I've been excited for it. I think all the guys from the Outside the Overton crew so far for me have been great. A lot of natural conversations. It's been fun. I think we all understand each other on a little bit of a deeper level because we're kind of in the same chats all the time. But I guess let's just start with that, right? Which was kind of the first thing. The face docs, you have largely been doing things audio only, and I think that you had made a pretty good argument with Adam, mainstream dissident, for why you chose to ultimately show your face, which was to get some more traction. And so I'm kind of curious, how do you feel about that decision? Are you still confident in that choice?
Man, that's funny that you asked that. Because yeah, I was confident in it. It was kind of a decision, like why not? Just we've got guys doing this. We've got guys in the movement. I feel like I'm trying to get part of it. Still very tiny channel, but there's a niche out there that I think that I can kind of get into. And it was funny that after the face docs came out Monday, I guess Tuesday something came up. I was just kind of had my doubts about it. Like, man, what do I do? I put myself out there. What if something bad happens about this? And I just I'm gonna trust in the Lord and just not care about it, because in this kind of Christian nationalist space that I'm, I guess, trying to get into or have gotten myself into. Really, we've got guys like Stone Choir. We've got guys, Cody Justice, Michael Spangler. We've got all these guys that are super intelligent, very articulate with their words. And that's not me. I'm not a dummy, but I'm definitely not, a highly intelligent person when it comes to that kind of thing. Not saying I am not smart, but I'll let y'all be the judge. A little bit of a retard.
That's what I was going to say. Give yourself some credit.
No, I mean, I know what I'm talking about. I love the Lord. I grew up in a Christian household. I've always been fascinated with theology. Of course, I had my times of not, straying away from God. But this niche of Christian nationalism, there's not many characters that are, funny. And I feel like I can maybe bring some of that
True.
retard energy to the Christian nationalist movement on the Christian side of it. So why not? Why not
That's
try and
funny.
go for it?
But that's true. And it's funny because I had a very similar, I guess, epiphany, if you will, because largely when I was thinking about conservative media and when I kind of came back to YouTube, wanted to take it a bit serious, take it up a notch, because I was in a bad spot, but I wanted to keep making content. I was watching an Asmongold video as I was thinking about this, and hopefully the audience doesn't hate me for saying the story for the millionth time, but it just hit me where I realized, he's watching this video about, I believe it was about Snow White, and it was like, some kind of leftist covering Snow White and why the movie failed or whatever. And I realized that conservatives don't make videos like that. The conservatives just do a lot of the talking head stuff. And in the same way you saw a bit of an opportunity, like an opening for creativity needed to be added to this, this roster, it's the same way that I saw it. And hopefully people don't take that as me calling their work low effort. Well, no, I'll be honest. I do think that a lot of conservatives put a lot of very low effort into their work, and it's part of the reason why we're losing the culture war. Thinking that the message will overpower the bad acting or the cringy acting more often than not, or even just the lack of conviction to try. So, for example, I don't. Who do I want to name? I don't want to name names. Let's keep it. I'll keep names out. But for example, and you know it just like how I know it, there's a lot of these channels on YouTube that'll be, this person destroys this person, or, this guy owns this liberal, and it's a clip and someone in the corner. And it's a lot of these talking head stuff. They don't do any of the editing elements. They don't try to use Adobe Premiere to do anything kind of cool or quirky. And ultimately, that's kind of like as far as it goes. I know people probably want names. I don't want to. I'll give names on a solo stream. Let's let I wanted Mr. Todd here not to take any extra flack than he needs to get. With that though, how happy are you with the Christian nationalist movement right now?
It's hard to say. It's 50-50, I guess. I wasn't expecting that question. but really, I am happy with it. And then again, at the same time, I'm not. I see a lot of infighting when it comes down to just what I would call tertiary issues, issues that really aren't as important. And I think we're going to kind of get into, some stuff like that of the, the infighting of, well, you don't baptize your babies. You're not a Calvinist, that kind of stuff. And we've got to fight over this. Like, dude, can we not just like win and then figure out that crap later? That's kind of my feelings on it completely. And we've had a nation that's been completely turned over to everyone except for the people that built it, the heritage Americans. And I'm tired of fighting about certain issues that really aren't going to matter right now. Will they matter in the future? Of course. But right now, we've got other fish to fry.
I completely agree with you. And I think that the way I would kind of frame it even too with that is there's some things that I do think are worth an argument. And there are some things that I think aren't worth an argument, at least not right now. And I think part of that is kind of, it kind of goes in that concept of that old kind of, old man wisdom, which is you need to know when to pick your battles. It's not about not fighting it at all, but is now the right or the best time to be picking this battle. And I think that kind of defines and underpins a lot of this, which is like, okay, so we have right now, we have women pastors, women deacons, we have a lot of Christian churches outright like praying to they, them, or some churches are playing Taylor Swift. And, and then you have like these other more peripheral elements of just like feminism in general. Those I see as much more greater threats to Christianity as a whole than I do see a smaller argument between the sects over a clear Christian value. It's like that to me is like, let's put that in a whole different category. But it sucks because I still see the fighting happening all the time. It'll be prominent Catholic account arguing with the prominent Orthodoxy account over something that it's like, ultimately, if you were to pull them out and zoom them out and test them on 10 broader issues, you would find that they probably agree on all 10. It's that they want to pick and argue over these kind of more smaller pieces. And I do get some people hold these sacraments in a bit stronger of light. But for example, and not to talk too long or rain over you, I'd thought about this.
Your channel.
It's fine. I want to keep it, keep it even. But I'd noticed this in the Discord, and I won't name it. I don't want to say anything. It's not like it's bad. But in the Discord, we have a guy, and much like myself too, I had a recent child, and I love my daughter with everything inside of me. Like I want to show her, I want to be like, look at my daughter, look at this, look at this. But at the same time, you have to think about what are the optics of me, a grown man, posting in my Discord to other grown men, like, here's my daughter. But, and as I was thinking about that, I was like, that sucks because like I'm kind of held back by these social parameters. But at the same time, like here I am, like in the most like platonic sense of like wanting to show off to my friends, my brothers, the brotherhood. Hey, look at my daughter. I'm very proud of her. I can't. I'm held back by it. But on the other end, women are freely like taking their clothes off in the streets and doing whatever and being praised for it. And it's like we're at the point now where it's like it's not even the battle of the sexes is bad. It's that like in certain areas, like men are being outright denied their humanity. And I think this is ultimately what's underpinning a lot of what we're seeing with the leave of Protestantism. A lot of men are identifying Protestantism as being like a one-for-one kind of like, that's the Christianity associated with feminism. And that's where you get the ortho bro kind of trend, where a lot of these guys are like, I will take anything but any more of this. And then they end up going Catholic or Orthodoxy. And so I'm kind of curious, what are your kind of overall thoughts with this kind of dynamic we have?
No, I agree with you. And, you mentioned something that made me think about it because it was fresh on my mind today. I would enjoy, sharing pictures of my family with the boys as well. My wife took the girls to the zoo today. She was sending me some pictures. I was like, man, I got some good looking kids. Like it'd be nice to just, hey guys, I got a good looking family. You want to boast in that, not in a prideful, sinful way of boasting, but be proud of what the Lord has blessed you with. And we can't do that. And my fear, the reason why I don't do that is because I'm afraid of who's going to find that picture. There's AI out there, like that's just another rabbit hole we can go down to.
Yeah.
But that's just scary. Enough said of that. I think everybody knows what I'm implying by that. There's a lot of sickos out there. But when it comes to, our guys, of course we're going to trust our guys, but we can't do that. And it seems like we've got a couple generations of men that have been told to feel ashamed for being a man, feel ashamed for, doing manly things, lifting heavy weights and all this stuff. And it has been from the pulpit mostly. And luckily I grew up in a pretty, what we would consider based Protestant Baptist church, but it was still, I still have my issues with Baptists. And, if you go to my channel, I've got several episodes on that. Like the first 3 or 4 episodes was just me bashing Baptists. But I love my Baptist brothers. I really do. I guess it's just like you said, the the feminization and the egalitarian mindset that is in Protestantism. And it has opened up the door for a lot of people going, Catholic Orthodox, because they look at these aesthetics and they think, wow, that looks a lot more masculine than what I see, every Sunday morning with the band up there and with, female pastors, or, the special sung by this lady that's going to be crying halfway through it. Kind of grew up with some of that. So,
Right.
it does frustrate you. And I did look into these things, and that's what led me to Presbyterianism, because I found it to be a lot more based, in my opinion, from what I was coming from. And then I, studied more and more. And then I think we're going to be getting into that here pretty soon.
Yeah, no. Just a side note. It looks like we're getting raided right now by the Russellians, which we do appreciate. Shout out to Mr. Tyler Russell there. Love what that guy's been doing. So shout out to Future Nation, Tyler Russell, and Michael Leinhart in here. Just saw that too. Appreciate that, guys. We appreciate it very much. But to go back to what you were saying, the reason why I chuckled when you said, the Presbyterians are more based is that,
You're right.
that is that's kind of like the trope. You know what I mean? So,
Mhm.
And it was funny because as we're getting to do this, I have like almost zero knowledge of Presbyterianism. I'll open myself up like I'm an idiot when it comes to Reformed, Reformation, Presbyterian, and all of it. I want to know more though. And so where do I go to find more? I end up on YouTube. I'm watching Redeemed Zoomer's explanation video that's got like 18 million views because I just wanted some kind of base level, idea. So here's what he said about Presbyterianism. So I took a couple notes, and so you tell me if it's accurate or not. This is from Redeemed Zoomer, and I know a lot of people can't stand the guy, but just to give an idea.
I'm one of them.
Okay, fair. We can get into that
Absolutely.
maybe a little
Can't
bit.
stand
Too.
him.
And again, we're getting rated pretty hard. I do appreciate it, guys. But what it says here,
Nice.
so he basically outlined, and there's a few points here. So it says, what does it mean to be reformed? And basically, out of the Reformation. He then highlights that Presbyterianism being the closely linked to Reform, they're kind of one and the same, highlights it as being more God-centered, where like Methodists being more Holy Spirit-centered, right? Hence method, right, from John Wesley.
Yep.
And then you have sovereignty and covenant. And God's sovereignty and God's covenant make up like two large portions. Like they are a bit more foundational to a lot of Reform beliefs, as you would find in other sects. And then the base portion, which is funny because he threw that in there as well, which is there's an extreme focus on theology. And because of that, they get the nerdy Christian reputation. They get
Very much so.
these guys play Warhammer 40K and World of Warcraft, right? It's like all of like the super nerds end up flocking to the Reformed. And once he said that, that kind of got me thinking, which is, for one, well, I am kind of one of those guys, right? I'm just kind of like this nerdy video game guy. But also, just anecdotally, like that makes me think, well, wouldn't there be something there? If all the smart guys are flocking to one sect, like, doesn't that kind of like, isn't that a hint? Or like a sign, maybe there's something here? But we can get into Redeemed Zoomer here in a second, but I guess, is that an accurate kind of like opener to what, Reformed belief is?
Yeah, no, it is. And, the problem I have with Redeemed Zoomer is he puts out a lot of good information. But he's I'll just, kind of break it down for you. I'm not in the PCUSA. The PCUSA is the mainline denomination of the Presbyterianism. And I'm in the PCA, which is Presbyterian Church of America, not United States of America. And they split off correct me if I'm wrong in the chat, guys, but like the 70s from the PCUSA, because they started to see the liberal drift. And they started to see the, women deaconesses, because that's where it started. And they split in the 70s and started their own denomination. And, that's the part that I'm in. And really, it is extremely conservative. I know here in the past couple years, or really this year at the General Assembly, they had some controversial issues. They had a study committee over Christian nationalism. A few controversial stuff, but they still condemn, a lot of the stuff that's not biblical that's going on in a lot of the other mainline denominations. So the PCA in general, and like the OPC, which is Orthodox Presbyterian Church, they're both very conservative, and that's where I'm at. And they do hold to, the sovereignty of God. It's probably the most important thing, and that would be kind of wrapped up in Calvinism. and Reformed theology. And those are things that really I had never contemplated growing up in the church. And, I grew up in the church my whole life. Like, I was there every time it opened. And it's just funny, when I moved to the Presbyterian church, it's like, wow, we get a lot of Bible every Sunday. And my local church is very, very conservative. Very, my elders go and fight in the General Assembly, or they go fight in the presbyteries when things that come up that are liberal. So I've got a good church, and I'm thankful for that.
And that's one thing I think I've never had. And I feel like that probably throws a lot of people under the bus, me personally, but I don't want to be a liar, so I'll be honest. And that's part of the reason why, I went from church to church to church. So we went from Baptist to Methodist to Nazarene,
Okay.
and didn't have really good experiences with any of them. And in fact, I think the Nazarene experience probably pushed me back away from it, to be honest with you. My issue, though, and I think this kind of gets highlighted even in the Redeemed Zoomer video, although he just highlights it. He doesn't put it in like a negative light, but I think it is a negative light. And that is, even if we're not even looking at this difference of sex, right? Even if we're not looking, and you even said it too, even if we're not looking between Anglicans and Presbyterians, even among Presbyterians, it goes, the PCUSA, you have a liberal wing of Presbyterianism, and you have a conservative wing of Presbyterianism. The same thing's true for Baptists, right? You have the liberal kind of convention for Baptists, you have the conservative, and that kind of is like that's what Protestantism is becoming. It is so balkanized now. It is so broken up.
Yeah.
And I guess that's where I probably would have a bit stronger leaning towards orthodoxy or Catholicism, which is they have a tighter, more cohesive structure. And that's just to say, I prefer that in terms of like, if something is to act as an authoritative body, I think that's the structure it should have. Otherwise, it seems like it is a bunch of like meaningless, like, separation and brokenness. But not to spend too much time, I guess, on that aspect, because I do want to know more. And so let's go back to Presbyterianism. This is heavily linked to Calvinism. And I don't know anything about Calvinism besides that it was named after John Calvin. And I think it's heavily tied to predestination, if I'm correct.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
The simple moniker of Calvinism is tulip. Have you ever heard that, Atlas?
I've not. Tulip, you said? TULIP?
Tulip. Yeah, and it is T, total depravity, which is biblical. We were born totally depraved. And then that doesn't mean R.C. Sproul says it like this. If you've never heard of R.C. Sproul, Atlas, go check him out. Anybody in the chat that's listening to this, go check out R.C. Sproul. He passed away, but he had a whole bunch of good stuff. Total depravity doesn't mean we are utterly as depraved as we can be. Total depravity means that we are born in a state that is fallen from grace. After Adam sinned, that sin passed to all of his generation. So it passed to us. In the Psalms, in sin did my mother conceive me, David said. So, we have this depravity in us because anything that we choose, if we are left to our own devices without the grace of God grabbing us and making us choose him, we're not going to choose God. We're going to naturally choose things that are opposed to God because it feels good. It's, fun, that type of thing.
Right.
But the glory of God is something we don't seek unless it is supernaturally given to us. U is unconditional election in TULIP acronym. Unconditional election is there's nothing that God foresaw in the person to elect them to faith or to give them faith. And this is kind of where Lutherans and Presbyterians start to kind of divide because they have a different view of soteriology, because that's what it's called, soteriology, how we are saved, the means of how we are saved.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Does it include like baptism, right?
Baptism, that's a different kind of thing. Really, that's different than Calvinism, because baptism, Lutherans do see that we are saved by or they are saved by baptism. Presbyterians don't see that. So there is that difference there.
Interesting.
Go ahead.
Well, I guess because I think that's like that includes the free will element of it, right? Which is what most people's, I think, the reason why they're kind of hands off is because I think they hear a lot of what you're saying in terms of like the predestination, and as well as like these different states to be in, as a lot of like, as if there's not free will, or at least that as if free will is a less of a real thing. If maybe I'm mischaracterizing that.
No, I think our idea of free will is very made up. I mean, let me just ask you this:
Yeah.
if we have free will, complete free will, Atlas,
Yeah.
did God come to you and counsel you, or not counsel you? Did He take into consideration your thoughts on who your parents would be before you were born? Did
I think
He?
you would have to, right?
Did you get to choose where you were born and who your parents were?
No, it's born into it.
Exactly. So, I mean, we do have free will, but our will is, it's so hard to get down and explain that and go through that whole
Right.
process. Because, yes, we do have free will, but our will is to choose things that are within our realm. And within our realm is, if free will was completely true, and we could do anything that our will desires, we could fly. That's not within our capabilities. So free will is bound to our capabilities, and our capabilities are
Okay.
unable to come to God without him giving us the gift of faith.
So this goes closer into dominion, right? This is actually closer to like free will within dominion, right? As long as you have dominion, like it's, for example, right? Like I can walk, so because I can
Right.
walk and I can walk in this house, and I choose to walk in this house, I exercise my free will of walking in my house because I have, I I reside and can command this space. So I guess I see what
Right.
you're saying there, right? To a point, there are parameters around it, if you will.
Yes, there is. And God sovereignly directs everything. And that's really the Presbyterian view, and the Calvinist view, even the Reformed Baptist view, is God is sovereign over everything, and He holds everything in control. And that's, a lot of people hate Calvinism, and they hate this. They hate it because, and I hated it too when I first heard about it. I didn't grow up Calvinist at all. I grew up on the opposite side of that, which is Arminian. Um, and that's just how I grew up. And when I first heard about it, I hated it. And anybody that comes to Calvinism that's not raised in it, they typically, fight it tooth and nail, because they're like, no, that's not right. It's up to me. God, the only reason why I was saved is because I made that choice. I asked Jesus into my heart. I walked down the aisle and said the prayer. But really,
Yeah.
the scripture points out to us that we can't do that unless God regenerates us first and gives us a heart of flesh, and in place of the heart of stone that we were born with. And that really, once you kind of grasp that, because you can't avoid the topic of predestination because it's in the Bible. Those words are just there. John 6, Ephesians 1, Romans 9. You can't avoid those topics. So as I was growing up, I guess I realized I was a Calvinist my whole life and just didn't know it. Because I'd have these questions like, okay, well, if it's God's will, somebody dies in my family when I was younger, what have you.
Yeah.
My parents would say, well, it was God's will for that to happen. Because I'd ask them, like, why did this happen? My grandmother was a wonderful Christian, and, blah, 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 blah. But, and the answer was, well, it's God's will. And, I was reading the Bible like, well, if it's God's will, then He's in control. And like, no, he's not, because that would make us robots. And it's just a different understanding, or it's a lack of understanding of the actual doctrine of predestination that really ties people up and it makes them think that God's unfair. But
Yeah.
again, like Romans 9, like, who as the clay is to question the potter? God being the potter, molding us out of clay. Who are we to question what He does? And who are we to question how He chooses to interact with His people and do what He does with His creation?
And I think these are questions that I think if you were to look at it, in the same way that I think, a lot of Redditors, a lot of Reddit atheists get made fun of, can God make a stone so big that, He cannot move it? And
Yeah, non sequitur.
right. And so you then on that same front, then it's also to say, and we know, right, omnipotent, all knowing, but to be given all those attributes, and then to also say on the other hand that like he also then wouldn't have known who would be saved in the end. Is like, how do you reconcile those? And that's one thing I would say is like definitely in the favor of Presbyterian belief, right? Of this predestination, which is it's something that's all knowing, well, it would know beginning and end, right? It would include both of those. If he knew the beginning, it would also include he would know the end. And these are kind of like tough things to handle. So let me ask you another Reddit tier atheist question then, which is, if that's the case then, and would that then imply that some people were predestined to go to hell and never had a chance at all?
That's the typical question. And it's so hard to answer, but we do see, I'm going to go back to Romans 9 on you. And, you know, God chose Jacob instead of Esau. And he did that because he just did that. And it also says that he, I can pull it up for you. I didn't have it in front of me, but he prepared vessels of wrath for destruction and vessels of honor for honor. And it gets to the point where you think, it's hard to answer that question, to be honest with you, Atlas.
Right.
I guess, how would I answer that question without sounding like a complete idiot? Like I said in the beginning, I'm a little bit of the retard in the,
You're good.
Christian nationalist
Well,
side.
the reason I ask is because I think more often anymore nowadays, because that's the only way you can get people to move. If you need someone to jump, you got to incentivize them to jump. And so that's why I'm like, I think very often in like incentive structure, because I think that's, you can understand a lot more about how people behave based on the incentive structure than you can trying to go into brass tacks. And so I guess then that would imply that if some people knew that, right, if the operant belief is that there are some people who, you know, NPCs, inner monologues, are not player characters, they were born to die to go to hell, then I think then if somebody was to feel as if, what if I am one of those people? Well, then they lose all incentive to be a civilized human being, right? It's like if they kind of get it in their head that they are entirely cut off, never entering the gates of heaven, then they lose all incentive to, you know, act right or honor God or any of that. And so I guess I kind of like square that away. How, if that was to be the operant belief and we push that, wouldn't the expectation be a lot of people would immediately start acting otherwise because they'd be like, well, I must be one of the bad ones, so, you know, I got no chance.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would approach it from a different perspective, or really from a different angle. And that would be the people that is what I get from the Bible and what Presbyterianism teaches, as far as I know. Those that are elect will think about these things. The people that are left in their own sin, they're never going to contemplate that. The Holy Spirit's not going to revive them to think about these type of things. So they're going to think that they're just fine. So they won't ever really question this type of stuff because they're left in their own sin. And it's the ones that are the elect of the, you know, of God, the ones that God gave to Christ before the foundations of the world. That's out of Ephesians. And those are the ones that are going to be basically convicted of their sin because the Holy Spirit regenerated them and let them know of their sin. Does that make any kind of sense for you?
It does. And this is something that I've heard even from my own father, which I don't know if he has any kind of, you know, feet into the Presbyterian belief. But that is kind of the way he explained it to me. And he must have recently read the passage pertaining to this, but largely along the lines of like, for one, not everybody's called. Two,
Right.
of those who are called, he's only going to call for so much and so long before ultimately he's going to, you know, that the bell's no longer going to be ringing for you. And three, and in those though, there's still like, even if you are called and you honor, but at some point fall away, you can lose the salvation, right? And so it's like, there's like all these kind of
Presbyterians don't
moving
believe
parts.
that.
So Presbyterians don't believe in that last part.
No, that's the P of TULIP, is perseverance of the saints, which
Interesting.
is what I grew up being called once saved, always saved. That's what Baptists typically hold to, is once saved, always saved. Presbyterians call it perseverance of the saints, which basically means if someone is elect and truly elect and they are, you know, part of the invisible church, then there's nothing that anyone or anything can do to steal them out of God's hands because God is sovereign over them because he chose them. And I know this this also sounds like, well, doesn't this sound pretty Jewish? Chosen and all
That's
that
what I was
stuff.
getting ready to say.
No, I know. Believe me, I get it. And
That's funny.
funny enough, it
Yeah.
was dispensationalism, what brought me out of the Baptist church and brought me into Presbyterianism. It wasn't even Calvinism. It wasn't the doctrines or anything like that. It was me trying to find a way out of, blessing Israel. So that's what really my journey began, is me figuring out. Oddly enough, I started teaching a Sunday school class, and it's just I got asked a question that I couldn't answer because I had to answer a dispensational view, and it started to fall apart from there.
Yeah.
But that's all I knew, and being raised in that realm of dispensationalism, that you're basically taught people that don't hold to this aren't even Christian, which is just bonkers,
Right.
But
Yeah.
that's the world that I bet a lot of your viewers probably grew up into. I've
Right.
talked to a bunch of people that had that as well.
And this is Presbyterianism actually has some pretty staunch differences. Probably largely because of Calvinism, and then you also throw in like the Reformation in there too. It probably makes sense why it's a bit different. I guess, would that then make Presbyterians the youngest of the sects, if they were like the most recent to have a development?
What do you mean? Do you mean like
Since
PCA or just Presbyterianism in general?
Well, I guess Presbyterianism in general, right? Because I guess if I'm thinking that Protestantism wasn't born until after Luther, and then the Reformation, as far as I understand, happened in the 1600s. I'm kind of curious what other large scale, Protestant sect had any kind of major development. I guess I would think that would be the Reformation. I guess you could consider now the progressive revolution. Now all Protestants are like, yeah, everyone can be gay and so go to heaven, and God's a woman. Maybe you could consider that like the latest development, the kind of non-denom development. Maybe that is a
They're just
good way
Baptists.
to frame it. But yeah, right. So I'm curious
They
then,
are.
would Presbyterian be the last kind of like real development? I think the most recent kind of change of guard in terms of Christian belief.
I wouldn't say that. Well, possibly. I mean, out of the Reformation, you had basically all the Protestant denominations we have right now. Lutheranism, obviously started, or Luther started that, and you get Knox. That basically John Knox was the one that kind of founded Presbyterianism in Scotland, and that's basically where that heritage comes from of Presbyterianism. Then you have the Anglicans, the Episcopalians, and what have you, and the Methodists, John Wesley, who founded the Methodists, and they're probably one of the most liberal of all the Protestant denominations now. But that's really, I don't know if it would be like the last one to come as Presbyterianism. I think it's just kind of all came from the Reformation, and that's where we get our stuff. And now with everything that's split, believe me, like I get why people are drawn to the other faiths that aren't Protestant, because it is, from the outside looking in, and even sometimes from the inside looking further in,
Yeah.
it can be a mess. It really can be.
So let me change up a little bit, and I'm going to turn it over, and maybe somebody can clip this if they want, and I'll turn it over to you. Redeem Zoomer, James White, who name some of these bad. I guess I won't. I'll hold back on RZ. I've seen some pro and some good stuff from him, but James White,
Sure.
I think, is one of the worst actors in the Christian side of the space.
Yeah.
Who are some of these people, and what are they doing that's so subversive? Like, for example, with the Babylon Bee, Joel Webbin and Seth Dillon, right? Like, those guys are constantly talking about how Christian they are, pro-Christian, but it's clear from the way they run the Babylon Bee, they have an extreme pro-Jewish bent. Joel Webbin gets ratioed all the time because he glorifies killing children in Gaza, all in the name of Jewish power and all these in these ideal sets. And so I'm curious, are there others in that light, like James White, who you think are really bad actors, like a Samuel Say, for example, or any others that kind of fit that kind of mold?
Really, I mean, I would agree with that. I want to point out you did say Joel Webbin instead of Joel Berry there. I do
did
want
I?
to clarify that because I'm a Joel Webbin fan.
I love Joel
No, you're
Webbin.
good. I just
Yes,
didn't
Joel
want your
Berry.
audience-
Yes,
Yeah,
Joel
yeah.
Berry, man. Yeah, don't clip that part. I like Joel Webbin.
No,
That's funny.
oddly enough, Joel Webbin is the reason why I'm Presbyterian. like for real. A Baptist preacher is the reason why I'm Presbyterian.
Interesting. Okay.
One
And
of
I'm
his
assuming he's
one of his sermons.
Presbyterian.
Huh?
Is Webbins Presbyterian?
No, he's Baptist.
Interesting. Okay. Interesting.
One of his sermons was about raising your children like a Presbyterian, because you're supposed to expect them to have faith because God gave them to you. And I'm watching this as I'm kind of transitioning or trying to figure out where to go. I'm like, well, if that's the case, I've listened to this dude for years already. Let me just go check out a Presbyterian church. And then, I had my kids baptized shortly thereafter, which is
Right.
a no-go from what I grew up with.
Yeah, that's yeah. So, well,
But to answer your question,
yeah, go ahead.
go ahead. To answer your question, definitely James White is just, I don't want to be, I guess, extremely rude, but we all know what he is. And really, I did watch a lot of his stuff back in the day when I was trying to figure out this Calvinism stuff after coming out of dispensational belief and realized, like, wait, what's this Reformed stuff? So I learned a lot from him. And who's the other guy? Jeff, the Pastor Ninja guy, Jeff Durbin.
Yeah, Jeff Durbin.
And Jeff Durbin, I don't know, pretty boy. Like, it's just, all you have to do is look at him. But
Right.
with James White, like, I put up with his arrogance and his demeanor just to listen to what he was saying. Just because I was like, yeah, I watch his debates. I'm like, this dude seems like an absolute prick, but he's saying stuff that I'm finding that's in the Bible. And that's where I came to it from there. And then, all the stuff happened here, I guess, about a year ago with all of that. And it just kind of validified what I was thinking about of him in general. But I do say that he did a lot of good for a little while. But they're gatekeeping is what they're doing.
Right.
And honestly, I can't name any more names than that, because I've just kind of, if I watch someone for a little while, I'll just be like, nah, I'm done. And then you've got the Joel Osteens, that type, which
right. They're their own kind of unique problem. Well, I guess the reason why I ask is because I'm kind of like catching up. Like, I'm in this period of like catching up. I do a lot of lurking, right? Like, a lot of what I do on X is like, I might not reply to every post, but like, I do lurk a lot because I am largely trying to understand who these people are. And the reason why I focus on the who is because I had a recent kind of change of heart, change of thought, that I think the most important question as it pertains to politics isn't what, why, how, when, or where. It is who. It is who wants to get it done. It is who is paying who. It is who is being benefited by. I think that is more of the important question. And I did notice this. So about a year ago, with James White and like Douglas Wilson, he's the older guy.
Yes.
And it seemed like and Jeff Durbin's included there because he does a lot of these, joint shows and joint kind of stuff with those guys too.
Well, they're both at Apologia.
That's what Apologia. There was like a concerted effort that they basically pulled the ladder up from underneath them, and anyone beyond this point of Christian belief is now automatically the enemy. It's like it went from we can disagree with these guys to it was like, no, hardline got dropped somewhere a year ago. And now it's basically like the Ogden brothers, Joel Webbin, all these guys, anyone who's in a 0.5% point to the right of James White, he's screaming about them. He's going off. Sacralism, right? Like, and I think
there's a lot of good memes.
Right. But I think it was Stephen Wolf. I think Stephen Wolf was the one who kind of broke them. I wasn't sure if it was a post that he had on X. I think that's what it was. It was the famous post of Stephen Wolf where he said white men are the last bulwark for Christianity, which was like the one that was getting, you'd have to go back. People were like, hey guys, it's that time again. It was a meme because X was suppressing the post so bad it was pulling likes off of it. So people were reminding every month, like, oh, hey, it's our time. Go like the Stephen Wolf post again. You would go back to it. I'd click on it. I've seen the post 8 times and my like is gone. My bookmark is gone. My repost is gone. So I repost and bookmark it again because it's obvious to anyone with a heartbeat that there's a certain level of right wing that is being utterly destroyed, suppressed, and obfuscated and attacked by people like gatekeepers to poison the well to such a degree that nobody even wants to click on a stream like this because they go, I don't want to be associated with Nazis. And so I'm kind of curious, like, for one, I guess, how do you feel about being in this kind of dynamic? And two, what are some of your working solutions to move away from it or get out of it? How do we not be in this spot anymore?
That's a question with a lot of answers, probably. My opinion on it, first of all, is it really does center around Israel, and the topic of Israel is really where everything started to split. You know,
Yeah.
and we had the Ogden guys and Joel Webb and all of them started to realize, like, wait a minute. And I'll throw in Isker with him as
Yeah.
well. I don't
Andrew
know if you
Isker.
know of. Okay, you know about him.
Yep.
Um,
Boniface option.
Yep, good dude. We had these guys, they're starting to just realize what's going on, you know. And I'll be honest with you, I've never read Stephen Wolf's book. I have barely listened to much of his stuff. Not that I don't like him. I just I watched other people instead of him. And I really became a Christian nationalist. I guess that's what I'd call myself. I became a Christian nationalist well before that, and so I was just like, I mean, I should read the book, but I've got a lot of other books I need to read instead.
Right, I get it. Yeah.
But to answer the other question of how we deal with it and how we go on from where we are, I don't know. I don't know if there is an answer right now, because
Right.
the old trope is we just got to wait for these boomers to die out. Like, it does kind of ring true. But at the same time, we've got a lot of people that's been influenced by that, and they're still holding up the banner for them. I mean, the Eli. Do I even need to? Do you want me to name drop him?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, he's one of the worst ones, dude.
Eli McFaggot. Like, golly, man. Like, no. Sorry if I'm not supposed to say that.
But you're right. I mean, like he represents
awful.
a certain type of Christian. And it's not like he's the only one. There's a lot that are like him, but he's the one I see most often. And it is because
did you see the meme of him with the picture of the girl that's going around?
Yes, the liberal chick. Yeah, he looks identical to her. Like,
he really does. That's so funny.
Yeah, well, physiognomy's real, man. I believe a lot of Prosopa insights. But not to cut you off though, we did get a super chat from Donnybrook. He says, do all the OTO boys get together to do Civil War reenactments? Is that why you look like farmer?
I look like what?
Like a farmer is what he said.
Farmer. Okay. Yeah. That's, you got to be in the club, man. I'm not going to really be allowed information.
I love that answer. That's actually hilarious. And I know you would prefer a lot, and this is going to be a hard segue. We'll just jump there though, because you had prepared a lot about orthodoxy, and I have been very vocal in my anti-Protestantism, if you will, for probably like a couple months now. And so we should probably dive into that a little bit. We kind of touched on a little bit the orthobro stuff. But I guess I'll just explain my case, and then you offer whatever refutations you got to it. So I got a little short kind of argument for it here, at least my argument, for what I've been thinking through. And so the argument for me though is largely that I've been Orthodox leaning. Not that I've actually become Orthodox or that I've attended liturgy. I've just been in a space of, I've moved away from Protestantism. I've been like, okay, I need to now zoom out and look at these again. Because that's kind of how challenged I've been to a point where I think that what I have been a part of could possibly be wrong. That's how far it's been for me, where I had to take a step back. Not that I've completely fully apostatized, but I've at least been honest with myself to say, hey, like, I have to take a step back because I think this could be wrong. From there though, the biggest issues for me, and the ones that I can't reconcile, is the lack of structure, consistency, and authority. And that's rampant. And just like how we had talked about you have liberal wings, you have conservative wings, on top of the already kind of broken up and balkanized, Protestant faith with all the different sects. And so the two verses that really kind of ground it for me. And we'll go to like an anecdotal example here with like Nolare. So like with Nolare, the majority of anybody who typically falls under the normie kind of Protestant faith, the moment that she said, okay, I believe in God, they handed her a t-shirt and a pack of Bibles, and they said, okay, you go tell the kids that now.
Is she the OF girl?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Okay. She's the OnlyFans girl. And this became like a big point of contention. Yeah. And so you have like, and for one, all the Orthodox guys come out, even all the Orthodox fathers, like the ones that you see on TV all the time. Like there's one who commonly sits down with Voice of Reason, but I think Voice of Reason is Catholic. They kind of think they just like little debate stuff all the time. He even came out and said like, no, she needs to spend time like in the back of the church in the pew, like
Yeah.
learning, understanding, repenting, and actually walking the walk before she begins to be turn around and is a representative of this faith. Whereas the majority of the Protestants said, no, how dare you question the cleansing power of Jesus? Surely she's saved. And I think anyone who uses any level of logic when they rationalize the decisions they make, which should be everyone, they go, that is nonsense. She should not be the representative. And in fact, the optics are so bad that I think probably from that event, probably more men walked away from Protestantism because of how Protestants at large treated Null Array. So from there's also the aspect of the church. You also have the aspect of what do you do when you have such a long period that the Bible wasn't even canonized? That's not to mention that there clearly there was teachings orally, and there were teachings that weren't all brought together cohesively. But it is to make the point that I think there's a period where when the Bible didn't exist, the church clearly would have been the leader and authority there. Beyond that, I think there's two large scriptural references that kind of drove it home for me. And one, shout out to Steve Splenda if he's still here. I actually talked to him. We actually exchanged voice messages about a month ago about this, and I'm glad that he brought it to my attention because I actually enjoy this example a lot. And this is in Acts 8, the verses 26 through 40. And I won't explain the entire story. But the idea is that there is a Philip, one of the disciples, I believe he's one of the, yeah. He comes across an Ethiopian eunuch. And the idea there is the Ethiopian is making the point that saying, what am I to make of all this without a spiritual mentor to guide me? And so that kind of opens the door with this guy who had the text, he's reading the text, they speak the same language, but he's opening the question to say, how am I, this average layman, meant to be expected to understand completely and comprehensively all the ideas here without a spiritual mentor? And Philip, they come together and then it leads on, and Philip tells him the gospel. They have a good time from there. But I think that insert is left there as an example of like, it's a bad idea to think that you can pick up a Bible and understand the concepts with no external forces guiding you. And I think that's kind of a connection there to the church, right? Because the church obviously is going to have filled with people, pastors, priests, deacons, and otherwise that'll be there to help guide you and understand things. Hence, even the hierarchy from the church fathers. So even if I didn't have a priest nearby, I could look to see what did Aquinas say about this? What did this church father say about this verse? And I could at least go and look to see their guidance. In Protestantism, you have much less of that. And the second thing I think is the most important one, which is brought up by Paul on how to treat the church there in Timothy 3, verses 14 through 15. I'll pull this one up actually specifically, and I'm going to share it. I want the chat to see this one actually. Let me share the right screen. So it's on screen now. This is 1 Timothy 3. Let me go down to the actual right verse here, because it is going to be verse 14 and 15. So I'll highlight it here, and hopefully you guys can see it well. And I'll just read it straight up. It says, "These things write I unto thee, hoping to come unto thee shortly. But if I tarry long, that thou mayest know how thou oughtest to behave thyself in the house of God, which is the church of the living God, the pillar and ground of the truth." And so from there, I believe that to me stood out. I caught that verse actually from an Andrew Wilson debate with a Protestant, and they went to that verse. And one, again, that I feel like I've not heard spoken about much, I think is very explicit in outlining that the church is the foundation. And so with that in mind, I think I have moved to a position where I do think, at least to me, because largely Protestants are always generally kind of thrown in this box where they always believe the Bible. That's the one thing Protestants share in common. The Bible, more authority than the church. Where I think I've moved to, I think the church has more authority than the Bible. That's me personally. That's where I've moved to. So that's kind of my anecdotal personal argument over these last few months. That's where my head's been at. And so anything you want to refute from there, anything that I said that you think is dumb and an idiot belief and it's Reddit tier, definitely tear it apart. But your thoughts.
No, I don't think it's dumb. And believe me, I get where you're coming from. I do kind of want to go back real quick before I go forward with my answer.
Yeah.
Coming from the Baptist background that I had, which was what we would call very low church very low church. And moving to Presbyterianism, PCA, is a lot more high church. And they hold to the Westminster Confession of Faith, which is, do you know what that is, Atlas? Have you
No,
heard of that?
I have heard of
Okay,
it, but I'm
so
not familiar with it.
the Westminster, I would honestly suggest, since you're, in a seeking season of your life, read it. It's not that long. You can get through it and pretty quickly. You can find it online for free.
Right.
There's catechisms, there's the Confession of Faith. Just read it, see what you think. And that was written, back in the 1700s by what we call the Westminster Divines. And they are the leaders of the church for the Presbyterianism. So there is kind of a different view in some realms of Protestantism that does still hold to a high view of the church. But from what we see, just rampantly, is not a high church view from Protestants. So I just kind of wanted to give that little anecdote real quick to let you know. And I do want to read the first question of the shorter catechism for you, which is, to me, it summed up the entirety of what Presbyterians believe just in one quick question. And coming from my past, I have never, growing up, I'd never heard a confession. I'd never heard the Apostles' Creed, the Nicene Creed. I didn't know about these things at all. And it was just kind of floored me when I came to the Presbyterian Church, like, wow, all this stuff, like, yeah, it's extra biblical, but it's biblically based. It's just, it is helping people to understand what the Bible teaches, kind of like what you just said. And that's what made me fall in love with Presbyterianism and, the doctrines. And the question is, what is the chief end of man? The answer is, man's chief end is to glorify God and to enjoy him forever. Right. Basically, it's asking, like, what is our end goal? Like, what is our purpose in life? And it is to glorify God and to enjoy him for all of eternity. And that stuck out to me.
Yeah, I think that's, and for one, it's been on my mind because I feel like I've been seeing it on my shelf. My wife has the catechisms. I think both. There's two versions, right? There's the small. There's like what do they call it?
There's the larger and the shorter of the Westminster.
Larger and the shorter. Yeah. And she has both of them, I believe, sitting just on her pillar with like her Bible and stuff too. So I'm pretty sure she's actually read them and studied through them. She actually went to a Lutheran school, I believe, growing up.
Okay, so if she's Lutheran, then that would be the Heidelberg Catechism.
Interesting. Okay, Heidelberg.
They're different catechisms.
Interesting. Okay. Mm-hmm. I didn't even know that. I thought that was all Lutheran. I didn't realize there was other ones.
No, there's for the Lutherans they have the Heidelberg, and for the Presbyterians we have the Westminster.
So we're finding out that I'm actually more retarded about Christianity than you are. So see, I am the idiot here. See, you know more than I do.
You're fine, man. Like, and I have it all in my head. I just have a problem getting it out sometimes, if that makes any sense.
No, I get that. I guess if I was to add one other element that I guess I forgot to mention there, but I didn't have it on the outline, is the kind of the mysticism aspect of orthodoxy. And
that's going to be my refutation.
Was that going to be refutation? Because I think that's what
most of it.
I think that's what gives people a lot of the they're like, okay, whoa, like, what do you mean, like, mystic, and like, what is all that? Because I think people hear that and they automatically think like witchcraft, voodoo, or whatever, and that's like being attached to Christianity. It's like it's just a bad kind of feeling because it's different, but it's Eastern. But there are things that I do think that are mystical, and there are aspects, I believe, of Christianity. Like when you go to Job, for example, there's an aspect of like, why do you think he couldn't understand what he saw there for a second? I mean, there's a part of it is like, for one, he didn't have the capacity to, but the other element of it is just like, was it just, if you were to define what the fourth dimension is, like why was mysticism not allowed to be the definer of that, right? And there are things too, like intuition, energy, certain things like that I can, like we all know intuitively right now we're being owned and destroyed by an elite ring of pedophiles that blackmail this nation. Right? It's like we all, like intuitively.
To me.
Right. But there's certain energies like that, in the same way that I can kind of describe like the way that the feeling of like when you know what the right thing to do is. And then also kind of attaching that when people in groups know what the right thing to do is. And so there's like a lot of these things that I think there are, because I don't think humans can explain everything. I think that you can't excuse mysticism. I guess if that makes sense. Kind of like the gear elves when people do ayahuasca. It's like scientists have been looking at that for a long time. They can't explain it. I think there are some things about this life that just are mystical. And maybe that's a loose term to describe, spiritual, or the Holy Spirit working in ways we can understand.
No, yeah, I thought you were going to continue there.
No, you're
um,
good. You're good.
no, really, I would say, I mean, even the Bible says that the gospel the mystery of the gospel, and there are mysterious things. I mean, how are we supposed to understand this stuff in our finite human bodies?
Right.
It's just impossible for us. We can't even comprehend God or the Trinity. We just can't, because we're not capable of it. Yes, we're told to seek that knowledge, and we're supposed to, as Christians, search out for those things and to have a deeper understanding of God. But I do think that God is so deep and so vast that for all of eternity, we're going to be learning about who God is and what He is, because that's how big He is and how vast He is, that we'll never understand it. And it will,
Right.
each little tidbit that we're going to find out in heaven, I think, will just cause us to just praise and glorify Him because of how awesome He is. And that's how I approach the mystery side of the gospel. And for me, as I started to look into the Eastern Orthodox Church, because I was attracted to it as well. Who isn't? Well, we see the stuff going on in the Protestantism, just like you brought up, and I want something that's not that, something that's a lot more masculine.
Right.
So, yeah, I have my problems with Catholics. I love my Catholic brothers. I do think there are Christians in all denominations. That's what, as Presbyterians, call the visible versus invisible church. And, I'm going to I'm going to say something and kind of go on a little bit of a spiel here, if you don't mind.
No,
And
go ahead.
I want to preface it with saying that I don't want to make your audience mad. I don't want to step on anyone's toes. But I'm probably going to.
They'll be
And
fine. They'll get
but
over it.
it's out of a place of care. It's out of a genuine place of not wanting to see people led astray, and not wanting people to be taken down a path that can be potentially very dark and very bad. Because the things that I see from this Eastern religion, it makes me pause and think that, well, that could be teachings that are not from the Holy Spirit. So basically, my first point, I got a lot of this stuff from the episode from Stone Choir on what is it? Very Eastern, less Orthodox. Have you watched that episode, Atlas?
I have not, but it is on my list to watch, because I would do want to hear their arguments.
You should. I mean, I kind of got a little bit of a outline from it, and then went and did some research on my own from the topics that they brought up.
Perfect.
But it's just, kind of rehashing stuff years ago that I kind of went through when I was looking into the Orthodox Church. First point I want to make, it's not even really the denomination point. It's not even a spiritual point, but it's just, we've got these Christian nationalist-based dudes that are looking for a base church, and they're Americans, and they turn to a church that's not even American. I mean, that's a big fault for me.
Right.
And the demographics of the Eastern Orthodox Church in America is 2/3 immigrants, 2/3, and that's first and second generation. So we've got these Christian nationalist guys, even white ethno-nationalist guys that are, trying to seek the Lord, which is great. And they're turning to something that's not even close to American at all.
Can I ask you a question?
That's just, yeah.
And maybe you don't have the answer for this. Is that combining Oriental and Eastern together?
No.
Okay, so just Eastern.
Yes, the things that I'm looking up is just for Eastern.
Okay, word.
Because fun fact, the unity part of it that everyone likes to talk about with the Eastern Orthodox Church is there's a lot of variations of Eastern Orthodox,
Right.
and they aren't all 100% in communion with one another, and that means that they have different views on governance and certain practices. The Eastern Orthodox and the Oriental Orthodox, they're not in communion with one another at all.
Right.
So this is just a quick little Google thing that I looked up, is the Orthodox Church in America is not universal, leading to different views and varying levels of communion. Take that as you will. I mean, but to me, to say that this is the one true church, just like the Catholics say, bothers me
Right.
because, I watched your episode with Pine Sap and I like that guy a lot. And I love my Catholic brothers. But
Right.
I have a huge problem with both the Eastern Orthodox and the Catholic Church saying that they're the one true church and you can't be saved outside of it. From Protestant view, we understand that there's grace. We understand that you can be in a different denomination and still have the Holy Spirit. That God can still save you no matter where you are. So that kind of bothers me with both of them saying that you have to be in here to be a Christian.
I do
That's just,
agree with you there. I definitely agree with you there.
it's just. I mean, I don't see that. Yes, I see it from Scripture that you're supposed to be in the church, but we didn't have denominations when the Scripture was written. Like it just wasn't a thing. There was one true church, and that's what Catholic means is universal church. And along the lines, if you go throughout the history of it, it did start like that, and then things started to go bad, and we had men step in with their sin natures and started to corrupt things, and then that led to Reformation and all this stuff, and a lot of stuff before that even.
Right.
So, us as humans have a really good way of screwing everything up, don't we?
Yeah. Right. The
We
truth.
do. Um, when it comes to the mysticism part of it,
Yeah.
this is where I kind of dove into and checked out really what they believe. And that's what gave me a lot of pause. And that is like the hesychastic prayer. For those who don't know what hesychastic prayer is, it is the short definition of it is hesychastic prayer or hesychasm is a contemplative tradition within the Orthodox Church that focuses on achieving inner stillness and direct union with God through the Jesus prayer. The meditative practice involves the silent, repetitive invocation of the prayer, Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, a sinner, using rhythmic breathing and specific posture to quiet the mind and body. The goal is to cultivate a constant awareness of God's presence, leading to spiritual transformation and the experience of divine light. That might sound good to a lot of people. To me, I don't know. I look at Matthew 6:7, where it says, "And when you pray, do not use vain repetitions as the heathen do, for they think that they will be heard for their many words." We're told not to empty ourselves because the Orthodox Church or the Orthodox teachings is about emptying yourself. Yes, we're supposed to meditate, but we're supposed to meditate on God's word. We're not supposed to be looking for this light that we're going to see. We're supposed to see the light from God's word, and the Holy Spirit will reveal that for us.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I guess one stopping point there. So
Sure.
because yes, the kind of like the practice of the repetitive nature of the pray, right? Of how you're supposed to pray, the mechanics of it. Whereas like,
Mhm.
like in Islam, I think there's 6 specific ones throughout the day at the same specific time, and it's like the same
Yeah.
prayer. It's got to be recited over and over and over again. Um, and I have seen that a little bit from these Orthodox churches that there will be kind of like a bit more of a routine or maybe even like chanting, I guess, aspect or element of it too, where I wish I could have a better substantiation or rationale for why they do it. Again, I'm not an Orthodox apologist, but this is something as well that's also kind of kept me from fully diving into to Orthodoxy. So I've seen that as well too. I guess my question then would be, where do you draw the line? Because couldn't you say there's still repetitive natures in Protestantism if everyone goes with the same thing, right? All right, everybody, bow your heads and clasp your hands. Or are you more specifically saying the same reciting of the words out of the mouth is what the issue is?
Yes, because I don't think there's anything sinful to pray, day after day for the same thing. Well, if there's a burden in your life or there's something going on in your life, there's nothing wrong with repeating that. I don't think that's what Matthew 6 is talking about. And I don't think that's what Jesus was talking about when he said that. But it is, I mean, what he rebuked the Jews for doing this. The Sadducees and the Pharisees, he rebuked them for, holding up these words that mean nothing. And it was just for them to get seen
Right.
and for other people to think that they were spiritual. But I see this as just, you know, it's Eastern, so we have these other Eastern practices with, like chakra and yoga and like the Kundalini stuff.
Right.
I mean,
Yo,
it
I
really
get that.
is all like it kind of does tie together. It is Eastern, and it does have to do with with themselves, because as they're praying, they're looking to find this inner light. And that inner light, according to their doctrine, the Orthodox doctrine from Palamas, who basically wrote all of their things that they hold to and all their doctrine, is the uncreated light of God. So it brings us to the energy and the essence part of God, which in my view, that's almost polytheism. If it's not flat out polytheism, it's flirting with it, because we have this essence of God, which is uncreated, and then we have the energy of God that is created, or vice versa. I can't remember exactly.
Right.
But that almost leads me to believe of polytheism. And what are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts on that actually go the opposite direction, because I think there is a missing element. Not to say like, the Bible's like missing something or anything, just to say like, I think when it comes to most Protestants' explanation of how the Holy Spirit works, I think it falls flat. I think that's probably why Wesleyans and the Methodist Church had a hot streak there for a while. Is
Right.
because people can feel that there is energy to things. You can feel it. Sometimes it's electric. Sometimes it's dead. Sometimes it's boring. Sometimes there
Oh,
is
yeah.
an energy component. And I do think, like, to me, it comes to an element of like, are we denying these things because we simply lack the capacity to understand them, or are we denying them on grounds because they are frightening to us and we don't like that's where I'm at. And it's the same thing where I think there are some elements that you can't explain. I think to think that you could explain every element of Christianity, to me, in my opinion, I think is nonsensical. And I think this goes to the idea of, again, going back to Job, like we will not and cannot understand the full comprehensive nature of of who God is, what he is, and the grand design of the universe. And so I think in that element is where I would surmise that there's definitely enough room for mysticism, which is some things you might not have an answer for. And I think this kind of ultimately serves the purpose of pastors, well, or fathers really, when sometimes like just things happen, and it's like to expect that we would be able to, you know, give a logical explanation from A to B to C that would warm somebody's heart of why they just lost a loved one in this really, very poor and bad and negative way, is like, well, then you have to almost have arrogance to say, oh, I can explain to you what God did there. Like, that's at least to me, like, that's kind of the way I view it. And I do think there's parameters where some things definitely can be explained. Like, you can logically, operative foundational beliefs, you can go this and you can see it and feel it. And I think it takes a page from the book from where Corey Muller is at, which is, with Lutheranisms, they like to talk about the two books. God wrote two books, right? You have like
Yeah.
more of natural law, and then you have obviously the Bible. And I think inside of that natural law, there is that component, which is some things can be revealed to you entirely separate of pure you being read off the text. And that's why I think there is room for this element of mysticism. But what I would say is I wholeheartedly agree when it comes to Christian nationalism, saying that Eastern Orthodoxy needs to be the Christianity that's upheld in America as a Christian nationalist governance application. That's where I would agree with you. That's where I would go. That is nonsensical. America is a Protestant nation, and even if we were to pick a secondary one beyond Protestantism, Catholicism has to take that slot. To go to Eastern Orthodoxy is to like go far out and away, from from what the actual foundational beliefs of what Christianity was here. So I would agree in the sense of as it applies to governance, but I wouldn't say it's just because Eastern Orthodoxy is not American is enough for me to say it lacks biblical truth, if that makes sense.
No, that does. That does absolutely. And I don't disagree with you that there are elements in nature that are spiritual. I mean, we live in a spiritual world. We're spiritual beings, and we can't understand this. So it is a mystery to us, and it does seem mystical. Um, if that wasn't the case, then God wouldn't warn us about it in his word. He warns us not to mess with divination. He warns us not to mess with necromancy. He warns us of these things, not because
Right.
they're a waste of our time, but he warns us about them because they're real and they can do
Allurement.
damage to us.
Yeah.
And this emptying of oneself that's taught by the Eastern Orthodox Church. I'm just going to call it EO from now on because I'm going to get
That's
tongue
fine. That's good.
tied. This emptying of oneself that's taught by the EO, it is basically you must do it to be of the EO, and I feel like this is warned about in Matthew 12 and Luke 11, and I'll just read it for you because I wrote it down. It says, "When an unclean spirit goes out of a man, he goes through dry places, seeking rest and finds none. Then he says, I will return to my house from which I came. And when he comes, he finds it empty, swept and put in order." He's talking about the spirit that leaves the body that's cast out of this man, this evil spirit, this demon that's cast out from this body. When he leaves, he's trying to find a new home. He's trying to find a new body to, manifest in, I guess you would say, or possess. And he's like, okay, I can't find any place. So he comes back to it and he finds that this body that he just left was swept and put in order, but there's nothing put in it. And then he goes and takes with him 7 other spirits more wicked than himself, and they enter and dwell there. And the last state of the man is worse than the first. So shall it be also with this wicked generation. He's basically saying that if you empty yourself and don't fill your soul and your spirit with God and the things of God and the Holy Spirit, then you're leaving yourself open for the devil to basically come in and be part of you,
Right.
and to overtake you. And I see the emptying of oneself it can lead to things that aren't necessarily like spiritual in the right kind of way. They are spiritual, but I think there's some dangers in it. And it just does lead me to pause and to think that, is this the right way? And yes, I know
Right.
the look of it and how, the aesthetics and what now people are calling the aura, it does look great.
Right. Or a farmer.
It does. But which kind of
It's
yeah, I
true,
mean,
man. It's very
it
true.
is true. That's why I looked into this stuff. And that's when I came to figure out what they believe. Like, it's not for me, man. And again, I'm not saying if you're Orthodox, you can't be saved. Not at all. Just like I would say if you're a Catholic, you can't be saved. Not at all. Do I disagree with both of them? Absolutely. I think the Catholics have their own problems, 100%. And I think we're not supposed to pray to dead people. I don't think that we're supposed to think that Mary, didn't have any other children other than Jesus, because the Bible clearly says that Jesus had brothers. And to hold her up, and I don't know, Atlas, if you saw the meme going around, or the picture, I guess you call it a meme, of Mary stepping on the head of the snake. Did you see that one?
I've seen it before. Yeah. Yeah.
To me, that's utter blasphemy. It really is, because that's straight taking the words that were meant to say Jesus, the seed of the woman, will step on the head of the snake, and give it to Mary. Big problem with that. But that's on another day. I'll probably cover that in my podcast eventually. But
Yeah.
I do have these issues with these things. But that doesn't mean there can't be people saved in these denominations. That doesn't mean that
Right.
anywhere that God's word is read and taught, the Holy Spirit is going to use that to convert people. And I like to say that they're not saved because of the doctrines of those churches. They're saved in spite of it. And, that might be offensive to a lot of people, but that's just how I feel. And I'm sorry about it. One of my biggest hangups is they deny penal substitutionary atonement. And I'm sure a lot of people don't even know what that means. Atlas, are you familiar with that phrase?
Not the phrase, but I might be familiar with the concept. Go ahead and lay it on me.
Okay. Penal substitutionary atonement is basically, there is a need for some kind of, I guess, what would you call it? We're going to be judged. Let me back up a little bit. We're going to be judged for our actions, for our sins. And there's a price that has to be paid. We can't pay that price. There's no way that we can do any kind of good works ever that will pay the price that is owed to God.
Right.
Christ took on human flesh. He died on the cross and bled for the sins of the world. That's what the Bible says.
Yeah.
He substituted his life and took on all the penalties that we deserve to atone for our sins. and to atone for our souls. That is penal substitutionary atonement. And that's, I don't know, you've probably seen the memes going around of the Reform bros saying that penal substitutionary atonement is the gospel. And it really is. It's just an explanation of the gospel, that he substituted his life for us and paid that
Yeah.
price for us. Eastern Orthodoxy refutes that. They don't believe that. And I think that this, I wrote down First Peter, where it says, who himself, talking about Christ, who himself bore our sins in his own body on the tree, that we, having died to sins, might live for righteousness, by whose stripes we were healed. By Christ's stripes we were healed. Ephesians 2:11, 1 through 10, talks about penal substitutionary atonement, how he put himself on the cross for us, and he paid the price for us. I heard a pastor say one time that basically there's two books. When you get to heaven, there's two books. Then one of the book has your name on it, and that's the book of your life. There's this other book that has the name of Jesus on it, and that book has everything that Jesus did. Well, when Christ pays for your sins, when you get to heaven, God opens up, or the judgment, however you want to view the Bema seat or whatever. I don't know what it's going to look like. That book that has your name on it, he's going to open it up and he's going to see Jesus's works, not yours. When he opens the book that has Jesus's name on it, he sees all your sins. And that's a pretty good analogy for what Christ did.
And so this is something that I did have a conversation with my dad about, and it was news to me. And forgive me, because a lot of times I might actually know the concept, but I don't know what the words are.
No, dude, you're fine.
But he explained it to me in the same way, and I believe it's similar also with Roman Catholicism, that essentially that if you aren't, I'm going to use kid table words, but if you basically aren't saved on the onset when you do reach judgment, that you're basically kind of put into, whether you want to call it purgatory, or you are just put someplace separate from everything. And it's not like it's hell, but it's like it's considered like some kind of like third place. And that argument comes into place because the lineup there is that you can spend enough time in purgatory that you can eventually be saved, and you can eventually rejoin people in heaven. And I think that goes in line with what you're saying, which is, well, then that defeats the purpose of Jesus. If you can ultimately just spend time amongst yourself in purgatory, and that's good enough to get you through the gates of heaven, then that demunes the price that Jesus paid. That was another thing that I think is again foundational, and it goes against like the gospel, very kind of basic tenets. The same way where I do agree, Joel Webben had a fantastic one about Mary, but largely saying like, a lot of what Roman Catholics believe about Mary actually threatens the gospel in terms of Adam and the entrance of death, and as it pertains to like the sinless nature of things too. So there's like, that's why, I've kind of just gotten this position where I'm discontent with like all of them. It's like all of like, none of them are speaking to me, and like, and I'm getting all this advice that goes like, well, you just need to go to church. You just need to go and go do it. You just need to go. And I do agree. Like, I do think there's an element of like, even if I'm not fully Lutheran, I still need to go to church, right? Even if I don't agree with all the Lutheran tenets, it's better than not being involved in a church. But at the same time, I also don't want to, I guess to me, I do place a bit of importance on it because I do fear certain levels of like apostasy, right? And being a nomad and never claiming it wholeheartedly. Like there is some of that kind of gets to me a little bit. Not that I fear it entirely, but there is some elements of that. But I wanted to go ahead and see if we could switch over to topical news. But before we do that, I want to turn it back to you. If there's any kind of final points you wanted to push out there if we move on.
No, I think you kind of touched on my very last point, and then I'll wrap it up, and I'll shut up for you.
You're fine.
You brought up how you don't go to church, and from what I have seen a little bit of it, I don't have a lot of Orthodox bros on my X feed or anything like that.
Right.
But Woe pointed out in the episode that what he sees most of the EO bros, they don't go to church. They don't go to the actual, Orthodox church that they claim. They just do it online, and all they get is YouTube stuff. And that's what they get recommended when someone comes in like, hey, I want to be Orthodox, and they just give them sermons, online or these speeches, or you got Brother Nathaniel. Like, I don't know. It's oddly enough that he went from being what he was to that. I don't know. There's
It's
something
funny.
to that if you want to dig into it.
Right.
Read in between the lines. I'll finish with this Hebrew about going to church, and I'm not trying to shame you, Atlas. I love you, man.
You're
Not
good.
trying to shame you at all. Hebrews 10:24-25, it says, and let us not consider one another in order to stir up love and good works, not forsaking the assembly of ourselves together, as is the manner of some, but exhorting one another, as so much the more as you see the day approaching. Basically telling us, do not forsake the assembly of the brethren. That's how I believe the King James puts it. We're supposed to be around like-minded people, and that's just kind of what we've seen from the Orthodox people, is that they don't really attend it very regularly, but they get all the doctrine online. There's something to be said of going and taking communion. There's something to be said of going and drinking of the bread and the wine.
No, and I completely agree. And perhaps I misspoke too, but 2 weeks ago I was at church. I guess
Awesome.
for me, my entire journey with Christ has been moments where I go, like, it just is like, that's it. That's the right thing. That's the way. And I guess I've been kind of waiting for that moment to happen with the denomination. Like, it happened to me when I realized, like, as much as I was saying I was a Christian, I actually wasn't. Like, that epiphany hit me hard. I had a strong, influence and role model in my life then. The same way it hit me when I was looking at left versus right, and I was like, dude, hold on. Jesus Christ is the answer. Christian nationalism is the answer. Like, I immediately, like, boom, epiphany. I moved on. And now I'm here kind of waiting, like I'm kind of almost like, please, like, please, can that epiphany be? Because I guess my largest concern is the reason why I find it to be a priority of mine is because I'm viewing it from the lens of, I'm trying to find a solution that brings Christian values back into the forefront of American life. And so in that, I'm looking at it where I'm going, which one should I put my energy behind, because with that goal in mind, and so maybe that's a poor goal to have and a poor attachment to have. But that's kind of the lens I've been looking at it with. It's like, surely the one that makes the most sense would also be the one I should put all the energy behind, and should push for being, push for those values to be instilled into America. But if I'm at the back end and I'm like, I still can't decide, then ultimately it's like, who do I push? Because eventually, that question will come. As much as I can say Christian nationalists and push for general Christian beliefs, someone who's going to come along the lines and say, what kind of Christian are you? And then that opens me up to all, getting all these apologists coming out and doing whatever. But at the end of the day, like I said earlier, like, I think that, like, that's, to me, it's like, it's so meaningless. The reality is the bigger battle is the fact that we are fighting good versus evil. The greatest nation that was ever born in the history of the entire world is now owned by a foreign nation, and literal child abusers run it. Like, to me, like that, like, when I look at that, it's like, I could care less about the small arguments people have about sacraments, although I do think they're valuable. I look at it as like, we have fish A, fish B, fish C, and fish D to fry before we get to the sardines that are sitting in the back bin. That's at least the way that I view it there. And I do appreciate all your refutations. This is actually probably the most like, I guess, maybe like debate style any of these episodes have been. So I do appreciate it very much.
I'm not a debater either.
Well, I'm not either. So we're a perfect match for each other then. So with that though, and not to make too hard of a segue there, because clearly the reason why I view all of the Christian aspects of importance, for one, as what you had said, the chief end of man is to honor God and glorify him. And with that in mind, pairing that with governance systems and obviously tackling what we have to handle on, because I'm not going to live forever. And I really don't intend on making my 9-month-old daughter pick up the pieces where I left off if something were to happen to me. And that's kind of the mindset I'm in. And I do think what kind of precludes this all is the fact that I think there is a sense of urgency for a lot of people. I do think there is a sense for most people that, the seat's getting hot, like we have, and Jeff said this when I interviewed him. He said he thinks America's got 2 generations before it's over. And I think a lot of people would probably agree with him, is that at this rate, 2 generations, America, in the idea of what it was, in 2020, is done. Like that version of America is gone. So from that though, moving into a bit more topical news, because I don't think that people still are grasping just how bad things are going, even with the current Trump administration. And we'll get to sports ball. I know you want to talk about that a little bit later.
No, dude, we're good.
Well, I guess I'll open with a more broader one, a more comprehensive one. So Palantir, Peter Thiel, 4-part series, private lectures on the Antichrist. The fear is that Peter Thiel is a major player, a founding member of the PayPal mafia, very close ties with Elon Musk, Andrew McCormick, many, many, many of these multimillionaire, billionaire individuals. And I think the fear, as it was outlined by Tim Dillon on Joe Rogan, I believe either last night or a couple of days ago, is that it's clear that what he is building with Palantir and the AI systems is setting up to be the surveillance and Orwellian system that we understood and have been told to fear from George Orwell's 1984 since I've been alive. So I think the question implied there, the same way that we can all feel the energy, the same way that both you and I and Zeb and everyone in this audience knows that we are on the precipice of a major change of an institution of a social credit score and all of our money and currencies going digital, we're at the cliff. We're at the cliff where here's reality that as we've known it for the last century, or millennia. And over this cliff is a new millennia. I think, to me, if we know what's on the other side of that cliff, which is basically that humans will be domineered and dominated by AI systems and total government control, does that not imply that we should do everything, and I mean literally everything, to fight against it?
Yeah, we should. It's terrifying because we see what's coming. And I honestly think that we were, already programmed for this. How many movies came out when me and you were younger? Alice, I think we're pretty close to the same age.
Yeah.
We had movies over and over and over again that was about this kind of thing. I think it was pre-programming because just to get us ready because they knew what was going to happen.
Right.
And, but at this point, what are we to do? Because, for some reason, they're allowing, us to talk about this kind of stuff on YouTube now, which about a year or two ago, they would have been shutting all this stuff. They would have shut you down. They'd have shut Zeb down. They'd shut me down, all of us.
Right.
Why are they doing that? Like that scares me, to be honest. Like, I just put my face out there, like, whatever, I don't care. But at the same time, I still know the repercussions of it. And really, why have they done that? AI has a lot to do with that. And at this point, I really do think the ship sailed quite a while ago. I do think that America tanked, and I don't mean to be a pessimist. I'm just a realist, but a lot of times I can be. I think it's done. I don't think we have a chance. I really don't. Like, I'm sorry, audience. Like, I don't mean to doom on you or anything like that, but
Right.
I think it's too far. I think our parents should have done something, and they didn't. And if they had of, maybe I know we would be in a different situation. But it's almost unless something drastic happens. Of course, nothing's out of the hands of God doing something miraculous. But outside of that, I don't know. I don't see anything happening.
And so I guess this is where I'm gonna try to approach this, and I'm gonna try to say what I want to say without putting me on the Palantir kill list. But that would
Good
be
luck.
this. Yeah. And not trying to sound like Fed posting either. So I'm gonna try to articulate this as best I can. We make decisions pragmatically and logically, right? That is the basis of reason. It's that one rations to oneself with logic, one decision over the other, or one option over the other. They are choosing via preference or value or some level of system. They are constantly rationalizing. So pragmatically, we rationalize decisions such as what inform our laws and morality and such. And one example of a choice that most people would make is if they are drunk, they would not get in a vehicle. And that is because we know that there is a high chance of death awaiting you if you do attempt to drive that vehicle while you're drunk. But 7 times more likely to murder you is a black person. Yet you don't see this kind of avoidance or awareness, right? And so, yes, people heard me right. You can look into the numbers. It's been posted on X for quite a bit. you are 7 times more likely to be murdered by a black man than you are to be, to die in a drunk driving incident, whether you were the driver or passenger or the person the vehicle hit. And the way I think of that too, pragmatically, is if we know it is over, why am I paying taxes? Why am I still voting? Why haven't I left this country? Why haven't I sought out a nation we could build again? Why are we not like, and so, but this is again, this brings another element too, which is it more honorable to retreat from the land your forefathers bled for, or do you fight for it back? And I think then I'm at the point where I think I can't move to the position of just accepting it. I can't move to the position of this is just what it is. And we know by the time that I'm passing away that my kids will be in some kind of complete controlled system. That's what I can't reconcile with. Now, again, I'm not trying to Fed post, but I'm at the point where I think that time, that bell is like getting very close. And I fear, and it's hard to say what I would like to really say without, threatening the livelihood of everyone here. But that's kind of where I'm at. And I think it's a hard thing to digest when a lot of guys will sit there and they will rejoice in everything the founding fathers sacrificed to build what we have now, but won't make the same level of sacrifice themselves. And the reason why I say that is because we have two parallels that line up with that. For one, they didn't have a majority. They were plurality. There was like a 30 to 35% of them. And even amidst that group, they were fighting their own loved ones, wives, children, turning them in. They had people against them inside their own families. And secondly, the odds were against them. Nobody thought that the American people who were revolting in America were going to win, but they did. And if we all as Christians know that all things are possible with God, why are we the first ones to sit here and go, well, you know what, man, if we might as well try voting, but if that doesn't work, that's how it was meant to happen. And that's what I can't reconcile. Is I can't reconcile that there are people who will sit and go, wow, the founding fathers so great. And on the same hand, knowing that we're in a much worse environment, that we know what the founding fathers would have done by now, we're not doing it. Now, I do understand that the environment's changed. A lot of controls are different. It is not the same level of like cannonballs and brigadiers on the ocean as it is now with like kill switches, and your car can just be remote controlled. So I do get that element of it. But to go down without a fight to me is, I just can't accept that. And so I'm curious what you have to say, in response to all of that. I know I kind of dumped a lot out there.
No, you're good. Yeah, it's hard to stomach. It's hard to really think about these things deeply because it does lead you down the path of just doom and despair. Because what can we do? Yeah, we live in America and we have more, I guess, firepower than the rest of the world, times two.
Right.
But what can we do when we're governed by technology that there's probably technology out there that the government has that we don't even know about, that we can't even imagine. So how are we supposed to fight against that? But we have to. And we're literally at the point in the next 5 years that if something doesn't happen, then we're just going to have to face facts and realize that, me and Atlas are going to be mutuals in the gulags. Like, it's just
Right.
like, for real, man. Like, what else are we supposed to do?
Right.
Because that's I guess I'm going to try not to Fed post as well or say anything out of respect for your channel, since you showed me respect being on your channel. But dude, it's hard to talk about this crap. It's
Right.
hard to talk about this crap and be honest and be real without saying, something that's as clear as the nose on your face. Because it is. Everyone knows it. Everyone sees it. Everyone knows what's going on. But we can't do a damn thing about it.
Right. Well, and I guess, and this is why it bothers me. And I'll just be completely upfront. The reason why it bothers me, I think, so much is maybe I was just lied to my entire life. Maybe nobody actually. You're right. There's an element, but even outside the government, like, was Tolkien, when Tolkien wrote The Lord of the Rings, was he lying about the concept of hope? Like, was this just all a big game? Like, no one ever would ever do something like that? Or when you think about, like, if the War of the Worlds, right? If aliens came down, and what are we to do then? Surely it would be a just as much of a lost cause as it would be fighting fighting the American government. And so to that, I look at those ends, and it's like all the messages from Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, all these movies when I was growing up was hope. Never lose hope, no matter how bleak it looks. You have to fight back. You have to fight. You can't live on your knees. No, you cannot just forsake and be a bystander. And then here we are, 2025. I'm looking around, and everyone's going, "Can't do it, man. It's over. We lost."
Right.
And like to me, it's like, and to me, it's like I feel like maybe I got punked, like maybe everybody else when they watch like all these movies about, because that's what drove me, right? Like, and maybe I'm opening myself up a bit more, but like I did believe in stuff like that. I've always believed in the greater good. I've always believed in doing the right thing, no matter if you get spit on or punked out. Like, I don't care how bad it makes me feel. Like, I know the right thing to do is to take even the negative and make it a positive. Like, that's what you're supposed to do. Even if you're getting spit on as a Christian, like that's what you're supposed to do. You were supposed to be kill them with kindness, right? And then to see so many men as I grow older, like not exhibit that or not even speaking even an ounce of truth to that makes me almost think like I just got punked my whole life. Like all these men wrote all these, high concepts about what it's like to be a man, the honor, like Aragorn, like being like believing in something, throwing it all out there, not caring. Like your purpose as a man is to defend and love and protect your family. It's not to be here, right? It's more so to be a sacrificial piece. You would do anything for them. But not to rant too much on that because I might get close to Fed posting. We'll switch it. We'll hard switch it again. Hard switch it because
Can I say something real quick to that?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Because I've been thinking about that. We are a generation that has not been able to fulfill our manhood for real. Like I take it for think about it however you want to, but our nature is to defend, to fight. Yet we grew up with watching these movies and being stimulated all the time. Our fight or flight response is just constantly getting signaled,
right?
But we can't do anything physical about it. So I think that's led to a lot of what we have is just this pent up frustration, and it's good frustration. I mean, God put that in us for a reason. It's to protect our families. We can't do that, but yet we're still getting that stimuli, and it's going to reach a boiling point.
Yeah, no, and that is part of it. There's so many things that are like very unsustainable, and I think that's one of them. Like the first kind of thing that I pointed out, like, even just in the Discord, like I'm over here, like, I took a cool picture of my, my daughter, and it's like, and I can't even show it to anybody because everyone's going to think this thing if I show a picture of my daughter. But then I switch over to X, and literally the next 3 posts, I'm like, dude, like naked woman, Kim Kardashian. It's like, okay. Like to me, it's just like, I am already at that point. Like I'm at the point where it's like, dude, I will never in my life ever capitulate to any system ever again. Like, I'm sorry. It's like, I'm not going to ever, obey or follow some kind of like ridiculous law or some kind of BS thing. It's like, after you've done and deracinated my peoples, my country, everything that I would have ever loved, period, that could have ever been possibly good, I'm not going to do you the favor by bending over and letting you reach even further up my ass. Like, that's where I'm at, and so like, and not to be crude by any means, but yeah, and hopefully that can be an example, because I ultimately, a part of what has spurred me to do a lot of this has been just seeing so many men my age or even older that are, quite frankly, just huge cucks. And I think they've ultimately led a lot of men down that path. And now we have a lot of men who are weak, effeminate, infantile, pedantic, and pathetic. And that's what we don't need. And that's ultimately how you get bad times and hard times. There was a lot of topical news I wanted to cover, but that actually this is great. This has been awesome. We went a bit further into that than I was expecting. And it's totally fine. I'm cool with it. So I'll go to I'm going to go to the big one. I want to go to the featured story I had here. Because I am going to backtrack. I'm going to walk back something I had said. I had begun to say, I think that woke is beginning to die. I'm actually walking that back. I think I lean closer to where your fears are at that you just outlined, which is, what is this recession of censorship if it's not something nefarious waiting on the other end of it? And I think I'm moving to that spot. And so the reason why I say that is because there was 2 main articles. One I'll cover here in detail, and one you can just look up. It's in Tulsa. But reparation bills are being passed, and not small ones either, but we're talking multi-million-dollar reparation bills. So I believe the city of Tulsa It was $105 million private fund reparations they are now allocating, I believe, just in the city of Tulsa. But the one that really blew me away, and I'll put it on screen here. So let me actually grab this and share my screen so the audience can see what I'm talking about. This was in Asheville, North Carolina. Hopefully the audience can see that if it loads.
I see it.
And so this was the first post here. So he's talking about how they had a bad problem in Asheville, but it's basically that they did pass this $2.9 million fund for racial reparation. So there's a bunch of these multiple parts of it too. So this first part is the race targeted housing policy, which is that they are blatantly going to fund Black home ownership, Black only. So not even just other minorities, but like Black only. And you can see in the highlighted portion here, hopefully it's big enough for people, create targeted funding and develop a budget to address specific affordable housing needs for the Black population. Now, if you move on from there, and this is a multi-part 170-page report, it is not just one element. This is a comprehensive reparation thing that was passed in Asheville. So he continues on. The next thing here is free transportation service only for expectant Black women. The next portion you move over here, they want to develop a Black Chamber of Commerce separate from the original Chamber of Commerce because, and they said, and you can highlight it here, I'll pull it up here. The reason being was because only 14% of the community grants went into the area that was 10% Black. So if any you understand per capita, they actually got a little bit more than what would have been, a 1-for-1 separation there based on demographics. The next thing, if you keep going, is the no diverse finalist policy, which in short is basically if there aren't any diverse candidates among your 3 finalists for a position, you have to write an affidavit of justification to HR for why none of the 3 people you wanted to hire weren't Black or a minority. Beyond that, the next section is mandatory DEI training for any manager, period, who works or resides in the city of Asheville. And it keeps going. Then you have the fair and impartial training, which is implicit bias awareness training. Then you go beyond there. Now we're on the racial equity metrics for schools, where they want funding allocated specifically to Black children and not white. And then at the very end, when you sign off here, there's no mention of equality through this report at all. They only mention equity. They're now saying the quiet part out loud. This was not about equality. They want to chop you at the knees to bring others up. With that all being said, I walk back my statement of saying that woke is dead. I don't think that woke is dying. I think that we are actually just in a very odd period of just pressure valves being opened. And I do heavily fear what my future holds for YouTube as well as Zebwoik and yours 5-6 months from now. Because I do think this is just a pause period, let people breathe a little bit more, and they'll probably go back to status quo. But upon seeing something like this, $3 million, I mean, I couldn't be more disgusted with it. And then to see the Tulsa one happened in June of this year, or July, it was just like a month or two ago. I'm just like, $105 million in reparations. We're at the point where it's like, where are my reparations? You know what I mean? And so I'm just curious, like, where are you at, for one, on this story, the reparations, but 2, like, where are you at with just like the race question as well? And like, how important do you find that to be as we discover who we are, as Christian nationalists here in America?
Well, first of all, I think that's, I guess, bait. I think, honestly, I kind of see them trying to stoke, you know, the battle that I can't say. I don't want to say it on your channel. We all know what we're talking about,
Right.
us versus them.
Right.
Like, I feel like that's stoking it. And I feel like this whole, loosening of the reins for your channel being on here, all this growth of the right wing and this, the far right really growing and them allowing, Nick Fuentes on YouTube and stuff.
Right.
I think it's a play. I think it's a play completely to stoke up our side just to get what they want for us to go and take care of everybody. You know what I mean? Both sides take care of everybody else, and then they come in and have a dystopian future for us. That's just what I think.
Yeah.
It wouldn't surprise me. I mean, we've seen that in our recent past. I mean, look COVID. Like, if you're still trusting the plan, if you're still voting after COVID, like, what? I don't know. What was the
Right.
second question you asked? I'm sorry.
Well, so like, yeah,
Oh, the
that
race
story in
question.
general, but yeah, like race in general, like I, because I do think that I agreed with Dan Bauer from last night. Lord, forgive me, I was couldn't remember his name. Where I do think it's this, we're not like what we're dealing with is less about left versus right, and I think it's closer to like the tensions are on racial lines. I
It
think
is.
a lot of the culture strife stems from racial issues. It's not that people are making it a racial issue; it's that it has been a racial issue, and it always has been. And I don't think that's something that you can just change. I think that's actually just a consequence of multiculturalism. You're going to
Mhm.
get people who are more ammonetized, and you can see it. They've done reports on all of this. I wish I had the one in front of me, but even people in their own in groups, like whites inside of a multiculturalistic society, are even more to themselves. Whites to whites are now more like atomized. They're more reclusive. They don't want to engage or open themselves up just because the overwhelming presence of all the other cultures make people naturally want to recede themselves because now the acceptable culture and the range of acceptable culture shrinks tremendously the more and more and more cultures you introduce, because when you introduce Hindus, now all these things are now they're bad and they don't like them. Introduce Islam, now all these things are bad and they don't like them. Introduce Christianity, now these things are all bad and they don't like them, but we like Christianity. And I'm just saying, you add in all these cultures, the acceptable range of things that are not inside that culture shrinks to a tiny amount. And I think we're at that point where like no one feels comfortable even being themselves outside. The average person has two personalities. They wear one at home and then they wear one at work because you have to. You have to be some kind of like neutered, vanilla, just like version of yourself to even get by through life without dealing with some kind of HR kind of consequence.
Yeah. Luckily, I've never had an HR.
That's good.
I'm a mechanic, so go figure. Like you
That's
just don't
funny.
really have you don't have those.
I'm jealous.
Um, right. So I can say those things at work.
Right.
we drop in bombs all the time. Um, for real. Uh,
That's funny.
and I'm also sheltered because I'm in the South, so people are still a little bit more understanding of race here.
I'm in New
Um,
India.
but you're right, absolutely, that it's going to be racial. And my stance on racial stuff is this is our country, and you didn't found it. Your heritage didn't found it. Um, I think we could work it out, what have you, on who gets to stay, who has to go back, whether obviously, if you're an immigrant or you're illegally out of here. But
Right.
even first, second generation immigrants, like we have to do something with that. But I get the feeling that, our side is starting to pull the cart before the horse a little bit when it comes to that, because we were talking about, well, we've got to do this, we've got to do that, we've got to, we're going to kick out all these people, and we've got to have 150,000 or 150 million deportations, which I'm fully on board with.
Yeah, a
And then, what
bajillion.
are we going to do? What do what?
A bajillion deportation.
A bajillion. Yeah, absolutely. And what do we do with the people that are here that they've been here for generations? We could deal with that later. We got to get in power first. Like we have to
Real.
be in the lead. We have to actually be the ones holding the reins at first before we deal with any of this. And the whole Trump thing has been an absolute psyop from the get go. I'm starting to see that. It has been a placation to our side from back in 2016. It's to make us think that, hey, we're winning. We got this. We're going to get what we wanted. We're going to get these deportations and stuff. It is literally just to pacify us, to make us think that we're winning.
Right.
And that's what I fully believe.
And well, I guess we'll do a we'll do hot quick fire, if you will.
Yeah,
Because
let's
I
do
think
it.
on the other side of that,
Sorry about the mic noise.
no, you're fine. Let me ask you this then. Are you a Joel Webben Christian or a Stone Choir Christian?
Yes.
Both?
I'm sick of seeing them fight.
Yeah.
I wish they would just team up.
Same. It's like it
Yes.
sucks. You're watching two guys you respect, and it's like, man, guys, like use this energy on feminism. Use this energy on family court. Like Go
And I
take
get
this
why
somewhere
both sides
else.
hate each other. I really get why both sides can't stand one another or they won't support one another. I get
Right.
it. Like there's on both sides, there's bad stuff. Like get over it.
Right. And now even me probably saying this and now mentioning them all the time, they're probably hating me. they're gonna both. That'd be cool. Maybe they'll become friends if they both hate me, and that's fine. I'll take that. Next
Come on, dude.
question: Gavin Newsom or JD Vance?
No.
I agree.
No.
I agree. I agree. And you know what's funny? I like the way that Fuentes actually framed this. He says, at least if I vote for Newsom, it feels like I had a choice.
Yeah.
And I
I
think,
won't ever vote again.
yeah, yeah, dude. Maybe that is the answer. Maybe it's just maybe instead of voting, I will go to the nearest ballot booth near me and harass people until I get arrested. Like,
Solid game plan.
no, I'm just
Like
messing.
it.
I'm just
Live stream it.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like I'm right there with you. Voting feels so meaningless. And this is the thing. Well, this is the thing. Michael, with Michael Spengler, he was like, well, would you willingly vote for wickedness with Gavin Newsom? And I think he has a point. But my point back to that is like, can you truly say Gavin Newsom's more wicked than JD Vance if JD Vance ushers in the surveillance system? I mean, we're picking between like fine lines here. They're both bad. They're both wicked. I'm kind of in the mindset now of like, you need a new framing. So it's like, we're no longer voting, and we haven't for the last like how many elections. Voting no longer really is determinative of like who wins the election. It's just which side of the same bird is going to be shown for the next 4 years. So to me, it's like, so then why don't we use the vote? Why don't we use the vote for a real purpose, which is we're going to slam the system, force Gavin Newsom, force JD Vance to have to reckon with the fact that a big portion of his base went in spite of him, voted for something they didn't want just because they wanted to force the change of the guard so the Republican Party would have a mass loss. Then they have to seriously start fielding some more nationalist candidates. That's kind of my mindset. So I do lean towards acceleration. So for me, Newsom 2028 until another candidate shows up.
I get that. I'm an accelerationist as well on a lot of things, not fully. Can't bring myself to vote for Newsom. I honestly think that we should all get together and have write-in, pick like 3 people.
Kanye West?
have our okay, white nationalist.
Hey,
no, dude.
Christian nationalist.
I mean, the
well,
white nation. So,
well, there are elements in it too. It's just like, I mean, like if we're like 97% white, like Kanye can be the 3. We'll give him a good one. then let it be another 1,000 years for the next one. And it's all the presidents from there. No. Well, listen, it's been fantastic. This has been a great stream. You've been a fantastic guest. Definitely don't hold yourself back, man. You have a lot of potential. Don't be nervous. Don't feel too much pressure at all. This is great. So I do appreciate you coming on, man. And with that though, definitely shout out anything you want to shout out, your X account, any place people want to find you. Definitely let them know where they can find you.
Cool, man. First off, Atlas, thanks for having me on, man. It's a huge opportunity for me. You're a pretty darn big account. Like, dude, I really appreciate it. Good talk too. I really enjoyed it. Guys, find me on X at 1989Theology. Same across all boards. Same for YouTube, 1989Theology. Rumble, 1989Theology. Just find me, like, sub, and definitely if you're here and you're listening to it and you're not subbed to Atlas, and do that. First of all, go over and check my stuff out. Pretty sure Tix Bomber put my handles and stuff in the description or something like that. I might be speaking out of turn. I don't know, Atlas.
Shout out
go
Tix.
Find me, guys. My DMs are open for the most part. So just, if you have any questions, you want to be on the show, dude, I'm taking invitations for my channel. So go find me and we'll see what we can do.
Perfect. Sounds good. And like I say to everybody, I always have to return the favor. So if I've ever had you, if you ever came on my show, always just reach out to me because I always will return the favor for sure.
I will do that.
It's been a blast, man. And I do appreciate you opening the door to Presbyterianism for me. I think that'll probably be my next adventure. Exploring that a bit deeper, and the catechisms as well too. I'll look between the differences between the Lutheran ones and the Presbyterian ones to give me some more stuff to chew through, as if there wasn't enough already.
Oh yeah.
But no, thank you for coming on. I appreciate it very much. And as always, guys, Christ is King. If you're not Christian, I would encourage you to definitely be, and hopefully, find a good source that you can definitely, lean on in that realm, in that respect. I wish I was a better source. I wish I was a better Sunday school teacher, if you will. But on those grounds, though, Christ is King. Ban women from public life. Put them all in the kitchen. Put duct tape over their mouth. Whatever it takes at this point to shut them up and keep their clothes on. Also, deport Kash Patel. And with that, I hope everybody has a good rest of your night. This has been wonderful. This has been fantastic. This has also been offensively accurate. And with that, I will see you guys in the next one. Take care.
What's good, everybody? This is Atlas Thugged. As much as we have, it's currently a media blackout right now.
It's about a 10-minute video here. Get the libertarians out of this party, dude.
Part of a new series I'm going to be running called Bot or Not.
I grew up as a white man, and you're the exact opposite, you know?
It's time we have a difficult conversation about race. 40 IQ points it needs to think about what is being told to you.
Most people are just blatantly apathetic to what goes on around in their surroundings, let alone this blatant.
A trans woman's penis make you gay?
Can I decline to answer that comment?
The dating market is for men your age.
I'm not a misogynist, I'm a sexist.
Right, like for example, like as a white man, I can go out and I could go right here in Columbus and scream the N-word as loud as I wanted to because I have that privilege. Those who would sacrifice a little freedom for a little convenience serves neither.
Titan says, Browns should be for whites. We were just trying to help them run a better empire.
Hey, truth.
But she's straight up, she's like stock market. She's like, bro, like I can't even buy a fucking house. Like,
And, probably doesn't help that half the comments are, oh, you're not banned on YouTube. Man, how is this guy? How is this guy not banned on YouTube? It's like, yeah, I'm sure YouTube probably picks up on those things. And they're probably wondering why so many people are saying that,
and all these top brass pundits who have some kind of association or relationship with Epstein, it's getting to the point where you got to think like I'm about to go look at my residential history and be like, did I live next to Epstein for like some time? Like, man, everyone on this planet must have some relation to Epstein. And then you go, oh, actually, no. This is because the administration is all wrapped in together with it themselves.
and I said this maybe about a year ago, what if Christianity wasn't in such a cucked position that what if Andrew Tate, like Tristan, would have went to a Christian position? Fell for it again award, #1 right here. And you know what? I can't even make fun of the audience because I fell for it too. And that's probably what I'm most pissed about. He's huffing some extreme copium. Oh yeah, sister, you definitely owned him. Hey, can I see you after tonight? It's like that's what you're competing up against because or bad jacketing him and calling him a weird little gay.
Is this like alt-right corpse husband? What am I listening to?
Okay, stop it. This guy's gonna get into statistics and stuff like that.
Oh, no, statistics, not
So-
this show. We don't do statistics.